My sister sold her house for freedom. Then my parents ordered me to take her family in, but my final move made them all regret it. I'm Emia, 34 years old, living alone in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. For the past 12 years, I've worked relentlessly, juggling 2 jobs at once, never taking a vacation longer than 3 days, avoiding luxury purchases, and skipping weekend outings. One goal kept me going through every exhausting night, owning a home of my own, and now I've done it. A modest 3-bedroom house on Chestnut Street, not near downtown, no pool, no pretty rose garden, but it's mine. My name is on the deed. The keys are in my hand, and no one can take it from me. I didn't borrow much from the bank because most of the money I put into this house came from sweat and endless overtime at my design studio and evening shifts at a local cafe. It's not glamorous, but it's warm. It's the milestone I dreamed of ever since my mother told me, "You need something of your own, Mia, something no one can force you to give up." I still remember the first time I stepped into the empty house after signing the contract. No one clapped, no champagne, no cake, just me and the sound of my own heartbeat thudding in my chest. I walked from the living room to the bedroom, my hand brushing the walls as if making sure this was real. This place was the peace I never had during an unstable childhood. Every morning I wake up to soft sunlight streaming through the kitchen window. I make a hot cup of coffee, play some jazz, and sit at the wooden table I assembled myself. No one calls my name. No one tells me what to do. I don't have to listen to arguments through the walls. That complete quiet is the greatest reward I've ever had. I treasure every inch of this house. The hardwood floor has a few scratches, but I never fix them. They're reminders of those first days when I cleaned everything myself, hauling heavy boxes in alone. Each evening, I sit on the chair by the window, golden light spilling down, wind rustling outside, and I think, finally, I have a place to breathe. Not everyone understands what it feels like to truly have a place of your own. Most of my friends are married with kids or living in stylish rentals downtown. They say it must be lonely living alone, or buying a house now isn't smart, or condos are easier because you get services. But I don't want easy. I want freedom. Freedom to paint my bedroom whatever color I want without asking anyone. Freedom to hang old photos of my mom without someone calling them tacky. And most of all, freedom to say no to anyone who tries to step into this space without respecting what I've built. I thought I'd have at least a few years to enjoy this peace, but I was wrong. A storm was coming, quiet, persistent, and shameless. I didn't know where it would start, but I felt it. This peace was about to be invaded. And it all began with a phone call from my sister. I don't talk much with my younger sister, Lana, 30 years old, married at 24. Her husband, Derek, 32, once studied photography but never held a job for more than 6 months. They are the free spirit type you see on Instagram, always in a new city, posting beach walks or desert meditation pics with captions like, "Choose living, not surviving." Lana and I were never alike. I need stability like air, but Lana sees it as a cage. She once told me, half joking, "You live like an old lady, afraid of risk. I'd rather have 1 year of real living than spend a lifetime stuck in a kitchen with bills." I didn't argue. Everyone has the right to choose their path. But I never imagined her version of real living would come crashing into the quiet world I'd built with so much care. 3 months ago, Lana and Derek sold their small house in Phoenix, where they'd lived for nearly 5 years with their 2 kids, Mason and Evie, 4 years old. They bragged about the hot housing market, sold at a great price, and decided to put it all into their dream, a year-long road trip around the U.S. in a van. "You should try living like this, just once," Lana said during a FaceTime call. Her eyes were glowing, and behind her were stacks of boxes being hurriedly taped up. "We've planned everything: Airbnb stays, online work, selling photos, making content, living free, teaching the kids from nature. Don't worry about us, okay?" I wasn't worried. I knew anything I said would be seen as negative energy, but deep inside a chill ran down my spine. They were throwing themselves into a dream with no safety net. I still followed them on social media. During the first few weeks, everything looked dazzling. They posted shots at the Grand Canyon, the California coast, and a music festival in Oregon. The kids wore colorful clothes, dancing in crowds. Lana captioned, "This is real childhood. No fences, no limits." I didn't hit like, didn't comment. partly because I didn't want to burst their bubble, but also because I refused to become the safety net when that bubble eventually popped. I didn't have to wait long. 2 months into their journey, I got a call near midnight. Lana's name lit up on my screen. I hadn't even said hello when I heard her crying. "Mia, we've burned through all the money," she said, her voice wrecked. "Nothing like the vibrant woman in those recent photos. Everything costs more than we expected. Airbnb prices are through the roof. The freelance gigs aren't paying on time. Our credit cards are maxing out. The kids are tired. They beg to go home every night." I stayed silent. "Mia, can we stay with you just for a few months? I swear we won't be any trouble." "Abra." I looked around my house. The kitchen light was still on. The coffee was still warm on the table. And a part of me already knew this peace was about to shatter. Before I could say anything, Lana continued, her voice mixed with quiet sobs. "Please let us stay, just for a few months. We'll figure things out after that." I sat still in my familiar kitchen, eyes fixed on my phone screen. On one side, my sister's desperate voice. On the other, the soft yellow light falling on the painting Mom left me, the one I hung on the wall the first day I moved in. I had become so used to the calm of this space, and I knew the moment I said yes, it would all disappear. "Abra, how long exactly?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 months. We just need time to get back on our feet, find work, pay off credit cards. Mason and Evie need somewhere stable to study. I promise we won't be a burden. We'll stay out of your way." I sighed and set my coffee down. My mind began racing. I had a 3-bedroom home, but one room was my office, and the other was used for storage and my treadmill. The space was perfect for me, a single woman who values order and solitude. Add 2 adults and 2 young kids. I couldn't even picture what that would look like. Broke. I took a deep breath and said slowly, "Lana, I understand your situation, but honestly, I don't think living together is the right solution." There was a sudden silence. "I'll never let this is my home. I've lived here alone for nearly 6 years. I need peace to work. I have a structured routine, and I can't upend my entire life just because you and Derek didn't plan properly." The line went quiet for a few more seconds. Then Lana spoke again, her voice low, like she was trying to swallow her anger. "So, you're saying no?" Not exactly." I softened my tone. "I'm willing to help. I can cover part of your rent for a few months. I also have friends in real estate who can help you find a decent place nearby that fits your budget." I thought I had offered a fair compromise, real support without sacrificing everything I had worked so hard to build. But Lana didn't see it that way. "You know how we've been living these past 2 weeks? Sleeping in the van at gas stations? Evie's had a fever for days. Mason cries every night asking to go home. And you, the only one in this family with a house big enough, just turn your back like it's nothing." I bit my lip and said nothing because if I opened my mouth, I might have said something I'd regret. "How many bedrooms do you have, Mia?" 3, right? "Well, we're curled up in a freezing van in 40-degree weather. I'm not asking for money, I'm asking for a roof. And even that's too much." Her voice was rising. I could hear Derek saying something in the background, then Evie's soft cough. A part of me ached. I love those kids. They're my family. But I couldn't let emotion cloud reason. "Berkey, I'll transfer $2,000 to you tomorrow," I said firmly. "Use it for a security deposit on a rental. I'll ask my friend to help find a place nearby. But I can't let you and your entire family move in." Lana let out a bitter laugh, one that wasn't remotely amused. "You really are heartless. I haven't asked you for anything in 12 years, but the one time I beg you, you say no." "It's not saying no," I said, this time without softening. "It's setting a boundary. I've spent years sacrificing for others. Now I want to live my own life, and that doesn't mean I don't care." The line went dead. I thought the conversation was over, but less than an hour later, my mom called. She didn't say hello, just let out a sigh, then coldly asked, "Mia, are you really going to let your sister and her kids be out on the street?" I wasn't even surprised when the next morning my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. My mother, Dolores, 61 years old, a woman whose voice is always soft but whose words cut like knives, called 3 times in 15 minutes. I was making coffee when she called a 4th time. I finally answered. Berkey, Mia, I heard everything from Lana." Her voice wasn't soft like usual. Are you really planning to abandon your sister and her 2 kids in the middle of a crisis? I leaned against the sink, gripping my coffee mug like it was the only thing keeping me steady in the storm building around me. Mom, I offered financial support. I even said I'd help cover a few months of rent for them. But I can't let them live in my house for nearly a year without a clear plan. I have my own life. You know that. She took a deep breath, then spoke like I'd just done something shameful. You always have to calculate everything, always need a clear plan. Lana's not like you. She lives from the heart. She might make mistakes, but at least they're the mistakes of someone who dares to live. And you? I tightened my grip on the mug. Living with logic doesn't mean I'm heartless. You can't expect me to sacrifice everything just because my sister made choices without a backup. Silence. You've changed, Mia. Her voice was softer now, but sharp like thorns. Ever since you got that house, all you think about is yourself. You should remember nothing lasts forever. One day you'll need someone too. And when that day comes, don't expect anyone to open their door for you. I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. I don't expect anyone to open a door for me, Mom, because I've always opened my own. And that's exactly why I value this home so much. I prefer. After the call with my mom, I thought things might calm down, but they didn't. 2 hours later, my father, Richard, 67 years old, called. He didn't circle around like Mom, he went straight in, his voice sharper than I'd heard in years. Mia, I can't believe you're refusing to help your own blood during a time like this. You're living alone in that huge 3-bedroom house, and your sister and her kids are sleeping in a car. I blinked. Dad, they're not homeless. They're staying in Airbnbs, they still have options. I already sent money. I even offered to help find them a place, but they don't want that. They want to live in my home for free. What's the big deal? It's just 10 months, he said. Mia, don't you remember when you first graduated and Lana let you crash at her place for 3 months? Did you forget? I gave a tired laugh. Those 3 months were during college in a 1-bedroom apartment on a couch. And I paid half the rent. Dad, this isn't the same. He wasn't listening. You're so wrapped up in being independent. You think just because you have a house and a job you can say no to everyone. But if you live like that, when you fall, who's going to catch you? I took a deep breath. If I fall, it'll be because of choices I made. And I will never show up at someone's door asking them to give up their freedom to fix my mistakes. He went quiet, then finally said one last thing before hanging up. You're real proud of yourself, aren't you? But you'll learn. No matter how many houses you buy, they can't warm a life that's gone cold. I rested my head on my arm, exhausted, not angry, just tired. I've been responsible all my life. I've always been the helper, the one who carried the weight. But the moment I set a boundary, I became cold, ungrateful, selfish, and Lana wasn't done. That evening, I got a message from an old classmate, Sarah, someone who still loosely kept in touch with both me and Lana. Mia, what's going on? Lana posted a status saying she never expected the sister she trusted most to turn her back when the family needed her. I turned on the living room light, slowly sat down on the couch. My phone screen lit up with the public post. Sometimes the one who hurts you the most is the one you once admired. We only asked for a roof, but it turns out some hearts are colder than October frost. Dozens of comments underneath, most from familiar family names, and most weren't on my side. I thought that after being ambushed by Mom, Dad, and the online crowd, Lana would understand that my decision wasn't going to change. I had been clear, I had explained, I had sent money, I had drawn a line, and I believed at the very least she'd respect that boundary. I was wrong. 1 week later, on a Saturday morning, I was mowing the backyard when I heard a knock at the front door. I assumed it was an Amazon delivery. I had just ordered a new bookshelf. But when I opened the door, I froze. Lana, Derek, and the 2 kids, Mason and Evie, stood on my porch, surrounded by suitcases. Evie clutched a worn-out teddy bear. Mason yawned, his hair a mess, like he hadn't slept well. I stared at them, speechless, for several seconds. Lana looked completely composed, as if this was perfectly normal. Good morning, sis, she said with a faint smile, like nothing had happened. I knew you wouldn't let us struggle for too long. I didn't answer right away. My eyes shifted to Derek, who gave a quiet nod and stepped back with a suitcase. The 2 kids stood still, wide-eyed, looking around like they were waiting to be led inside. Abrahalana, what are you doing? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. We came to talk properly this time. Last time was over the phone and things got a little tense. I knew you'd understand once you saw us in person. You've always had a soft heart. I couldn't believe it. She really thought she could use soft heart to change my mind. And you brought all your stuff? I glanced at the suitcases. Just to talk? Lana exhaled, like I was the unreasonable one. Mia, we're exhausted. The kids are sick. Evie's been coughing for 2 nights. You want to talk in a parking lot, or can we come in, have some water, and talk like normal people? I looked at the 4 of them. My heart clenched when I saw Evie rubbing her eyes, but reason snapped me back. I couldn't let emotion take the wheel again. Come in, I said, stepping aside. But just to talk, nothing more. Lana flashed a quick, triumphant smile before replacing it with her sweet sister face. They all stepped inside like they hadn't been turned down before. Derek placed the suitcases against the wall without asking or even looking at me. I led them to the living room, deliberately keeping distance. Talk, I said, folding my arms. What's the plan this time? Lana sat down on the armchair, smoothing her hair. Just 10 months. That's all we need. We won't be any trouble. Derek can do housework. I'll cook, clean, watch the kids. We'll keep everything spotless. You won't have to lift a finger. And after 10 months, I cut in. Lana hesitated, then replied in a tone that felt rehearsed. If things are stable, we'll rent our own place. And if not, well, we've been keeping an eye on some cheap flights. There are deals in Arizona, so maybe we could hit the road again. Berkey, I let out a dry laugh. So, after nearly a year living in my house, you still want to take off if you find a cheap flight? You really think that's okay? That's when Derek finally spoke up. We're not trying to take advantage, Mia. We just thought maybe you'd be more understanding. You know, family. I walked over to the window, avoiding their eyes. You sold your house with no backup plan, blew all the money on hotels and restaurants, didn't save, didn't invest, didn't make any security net for the kids, and now you're here knocking on my door expecting me to rearrange my entire life to fix the consequences of your reckless choices. Lana stood up, face flushed red. So now you're lecturing me? You always think you're right, but living your whole life stuck in the same boring loop, what's there to admire in that? We're living, we're daring, and you're just scared. I turned to face her directly. Daring to live doesn't mean dumping your responsibilities on someone else and calling it freedom. The tension in the room was sharp as glass. Evie started to cry softly. Mason buried his face in his dad's shirt. I spoke my last words, my voice ice cold. I'm not changing my mind. You have 10 minutes to pack up and leave if you need it. I'll call you a cab. Lana stared at me, a mix of shock and fury in her eyes. But this time, I didn't flinch. Lana stood frozen for a few seconds before her face turned red with rage. Her chest rose and fell quickly, and her eyes lost any trace of pleading. There was only anger now. Berkey, you really have changed. You never used to be this cold, she hissed. You used to say you'd always be there for me. Did you forget that? I clenched my fist, but kept my voice steady. I did say that, but I never promised to carry the weight of every reckless decision you made. Reckless? Lana let out a bitter laugh. I chose to live authentically. I dared to dream. You're a ghost. Work, come home, lock the door, call it stability. Berkey. I turned fully toward her. Yes, I choose stability because I know exactly what instability costs, and because I never want to stand at someone else's door with my entire family, begging to stay without a plan in place. Derek couldn't stay out of it any longer. He stepped forward, his voice no longer gentle like before. I thought you'd be different, but turns out you've always been the type who only thinks about herself. Remember when I got married? Mom said you didn't want to pitch in because you were busy paying off student loans. Back then, you used the same excuse, prioritizing your future. Sound familiar? Berkey. I stared at Derek, stunned. He had the nerve to bring up something from nearly a decade ago. You're right, I didn't help financially back then because I was working 3 jobs to pay off my student debt. And I don't regret putting myself first during that time. That's how I built this life. And you don't get to use something I couldn't do in the past to make me sacrifice what I have now. Lana stepped closer, just a hand's width away from me. You're being selfish. You live alone. This house is twice the size of what you need, and yet you can't spare a little space for your own blood. I stood tall, not blinking. This isn't about space. It's about boundaries. Some people go their whole lives never setting any and then blame everyone else when things fall apart. I'm not one of them. Evie began to sob. Derek turned to comfort her, but Lana kept her eyes locked on mine, like if she glared hard enough, I'd back down. "You'll regret this," Lana said quietly, like a curse. "One day, when you need someone, no one will be there." I gave a faint smile, though something twisted in my chest. If the price of having someone stay is giving up my peace and freedom, then I'd rather be alone. Derek dragged the suitcase closer to the door. He looked at me like I was the worst person in the family. "We won't bother you anymore. But just remember, you turned your back when your family truly needed you." I opened the door. The cold afternoon wind crept into the living room. "Good luck, Lana. I mean it." She didn't reply. She just told Mason to hold his sister's hand and pulled the suitcase out of my house without looking back. I stood there, my hand still gripping the doorknob. What I felt wasn't anger, and it wasn't triumph, just an expanding emptiness in my chest, cold, heavy, and tired. But I knew one thing. If I gave in this time, there would never be a last time. I thought things would quiet down after Lana and Derek left, dragging their luggage and their glares behind them. I didn't expect gratitude, but I at least hoped they'd respect the boundary I'd set. I was wrong. So wrong, I had to ask myself. Had I really underestimated just how far my sister could twist the truth? Not even 24 hours later, my mother called again. She didn't wait for a hello. Her voice cracked like she'd been crying. "Mia, did you really kick them out onto the street? You watched those kids cry and just slammed the door?" I froze in the kitchen, still holding my now cold coffee. "What are you talking about? I didn't kick anyone out. I let them in, heard them out, and calmly said no. I didn't yell, I didn't insult, I didn't shame them. But you closed the door and you turned your back," she said. "Lana said you stood there, watched the kids cry, and pointed them to the street." I was speechless. "Mom, I never did that. I invited them into my home. We sat in the living room, everything was said with reason." But they didn't want reason. They wanted me to give up my entire space just so they could feel like I cared enough. Brrf, Mom went quiet. Then she ended the call with one line that hit me like a stone. "No wonder you live alone now. Maybe it's just easier when there's no one around to disappoint." That afternoon, my Aunt Margaret, my mom's younger sister, sent a message. She rarely reaches out, usually just a holiday card here and there. But this time she sent a long paragraph accusing me of being cold as stone and forgetting all the times Lana helped me back when I was in college. That evening, my cousin Julia commented on an old photo I posted weeks ago, me reading by the window. "Books may open your mind, but they don't open your heart." I went still. It felt like I was on trial in a courtroom I never got invited to, and the verdict had already been decided. I tried not to react. I didn't post, didn't reply, but somehow my silence only gave people more reason to judge, as if saying nothing meant I was guilty. The next evening, my phone lit up with a message from Monica, a college friend and someone who used to be close with Lana. "Mia, I don't want to interfere, but if your sister's really in that much trouble, maybe you could soften a little. It's only 10 months after all. She's family." I replied with just one sentence. "Would you be willing to let a family of 4 move into your 2-bedroom apartment?" Monica never responded. But messages like that kept coming in from old acquaintances, former classmates, past coworkers, people who had never stepped foot in this house, who had no idea how many years I worked until 2 a.m. to pay off my mortgage. Another mutual friend, Kevin, messaged with a more neutral tone. "I get that Mia wants boundaries. I just think if it were me, I'd compromise a little. I mean, you live alone. Living alone doesn't mean living in excess. Just because I have 3 bedrooms doesn't mean I owe anyone the other 2. This house is the result of sacrifice. My right to live on my terms, bought with years of never getting sick, never quitting, never slipping up." And just as I was sitting alone in my living room, watching those messages pile up, my phone buzzed again. Dad was calling. "You should know the whole family's watching you, Mia," he said. He wasn't angry anymore. His voice had turned to something quieter, more threatening. "No one understands why you won't let your sister stay. They're calling you the Ice Queen. Have you heard that?" "He brick." I let out a bitter laugh. "I figured they'd call me a self-made woman, but I guess around here, independence is a crime." Dad said nothing else. He just hung up. I leaned back on the sofa, staring at the ceiling. The peace I'd fought so hard to build wasn't being destroyed because I did something wrong, but because I refused to carry someone else's consequences. And I didn't regret it. But I was starting to understand something. When you start setting boundaries, The people who used to benefit from crossing them will be the ones who get the angriest. Abra. I should have known this was coming. From the way Lana looked at me that last time before walking out, I could already feel it. But intuition is different from seeing it unfold. Loud, clear, and public. Monday night, just after I stepped out of the shower, my phone blew up with notifications. I opened Facebook to check a message from a client, and instantly my timeline erupted. The first post that popped up was from Lana herself. Her profile picture showed her hugging Evie, the backdrop a soft sunset. The caption was unusually long, full of emotion, and of course heavy with drama. And the only person in your family who could help chooses not to. When your kids are sleeping in a car in 40-degree weather and the sister you once admired just stands there in the doorway, what do you learn? That sometimes family isn't a place to return to. It's the place that hurts the most. Abrahu right below the post were more than 100 comments, and rising by the minute. Relatives, distant cousins, old high school friends, even people I hadn't spoken to in years, all jumping in with comments like, "I can't believe her sister would do that. A 3-bedroom house living alone and she can't take in her own blood? How do you sleep at night?" I read each line, feeling like someone had a hand wrapped tight around my throat. What shocked me wasn't just the outrage, it was the unanimity Lana received. No one asked for my side, no one fact-checked. All they needed was a heart-tugging story and an easy villain. And I fit the role perfectly. I hadn't planned to respond. Honestly, I wanted to stay silent, but when even my Uncle Henry, the one who lives in another state and hasn't seen me in 8 years, commented, "I always thought Mia was too cold. Logic without empathy kills the soul." I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I opened my laptop, took a deep breath, and started typing. The first line wasn't defensive. It was clarity. I'm not someone who likes airing private matters online. But if someone drags me into the court of public opinion, I have the right to speak. I wrote everything from start to finish, that I had sent money, offered to help with rent, invited Lana's whole family into my home to talk things through, and only said no to them living here for nearly a year with no clear plan. I wrote that I love my niece and nephew, but love doesn't mean losing your personal boundaries or sacrificing the peace I traded my youth to earn. I didn't use harsh language. I didn't smear my sister, but I told the truth. I didn't slam the door on 2 kids. I just refused to open it to indefinite dependency with zero accountability. I posted it at 10 p.m. Within 10 minutes, the first comment appeared, finally, both sides of the story. Then another. I once let someone rent my spare room for 3 months. It was a nightmare. I get it, Mia. Still, not everyone was on my side. Plenty of people continued defending Lana, saying things like, "Family means sharing." Mia still being too rigid, or it wouldn't kill her to bend a little for her sister. But at least this time, I had a voice. At midnight, Lana texted a short, icy message. "You chose to humiliate me in front of everyone. Don't be surprised when they all turn on you." Then she blocked me on Facebook. I stared at the screen in silence, not angry, not afraid, just strangely relieved. I knew it wasn't over. There were likely more messes ahead, but at least I didn't have to swallow the truth and let someone else rewrite my life the way they wanted. For the first time in days, I slept through the night. 3 days after I posted, tension in the family hit rock bottom. Lana vanished from all platforms. No more posts on Facebook, no more free spirit stories, no more dreamy comments from Derek about healing journeys. But that silence wasn't retreat. It was the calm before the next storm. That evening, while I was sorting paperwork in my home office, my phone rang. It was Dad, Richard. I hesitated. I knew this call wouldn't be easy, but I answered anyway. "Mia," he began immediately, his voice tight like a stretched wire. "Are you really going to let this family fall apart over a post?" I leaned against my desk and kept my tone steady. "Dad, I didn't post to attack anyone. I posted to defend myself. I was dragged online and misrepresented. I have the right to speak." "Key birth. You have the right, but did you really need to make a scene?" he said. "Lana said you aired family business for the world to judge. Now everyone knows, and they think our family is just full of fighting. No compassion." I gave a bitter smile. And where was the compassion when everyone called me cold, selfish, emotionless? Who defended me then, Dad? There was a pause on his end. Then he spoke again, his voice lower but sharper. "You should have been the bigger person. You're the older sister. You have a home. Lana's struggling. 10 months isn't forever. You should have opened the door, made peace. Your mother's been crying nonstop. I clenched my teeth. Do you think I'm trying to tear this family apart, or are you all just too used to me always backing down? Eberki Mia, he barked. Are you talking back to your father? No, I'm telling the truth, I said, exhaling. My voice softened but didn't waver. I've lived my whole life responsibly. I never asked anyone for money, never asked anyone to hold my hand. I built my life brick by brick, and the first time I draw a boundary, suddenly I'm accused of destroying the family. So what? Peace only exists if I keep saying yes? If that's true, was it ever real peace? He went quiet for a long time. I didn't know what he was thinking, but I wasn't done. For the first time, I didn't hold back. I did help, I sent money, I opened up, but I can't open up my entire life so someone else can move in like it's owed to them. Lana isn't out on the street. She's just being told no because she refuses to take responsibility. A heavy breath on the other end. Then he spoke slowly. I just hope you won't regret this, Mia. Some things, once they're lost, can't ever be regained. Eberki. I swallowed the lump in my throat. If what I lose is the peace I fought so hard to build, then yes, I accept not getting it back. The call ended without a goodbye, just a flat beep and a silence so long it felt like it echoed. I set my phone on the table, my hands trembling slightly. I wasn't sure if it was anger, heartbreak, or release. Maybe it was all three. Bursa. Right then, a new email notification popped up. It was from Lana. Subject, you win, Mia. The body of the message was only 3 lines. You turned the whole family against me. Well done. I hope you enjoy sitting alone in the fortress you built from stone and rules. But remember, when you need someone, no one will be left. I stared at the words, and unexpectedly, a bitter smile crept across my face. They didn't understand. I didn't choose to live alone because I don't need anyone. I chose to live alone because I was tired of always being the one needed, but never understood. After Lana's final email, everything went eerily quiet. No more calls from Dad. No more guilt-ridden texts from Mom, and of course, not a single word from Derek or the kids. My Facebook returned to normal, but my friend list had gotten shorter. A few people quietly unfriended me. Others hid my posts from their feeds. I guess in their eyes, I'd become the poster woman for successful but heartless. I wasn't angry, just dispelled, like I was standing on an isolated island. The days that followed passed in a distorted kind of calm. I still went to work, still consulted with clients, still watered the plants every Tuesday evening, but something in me had shifted. It wasn't regret. It wasn't sorrow. It was clarity. I began to see my family dynamic more clearly than ever before. As the eldest daughter, I was always told, Mia has to set the example. Mia needs to be patient. Mia should give in. And I did all of it without complaints, without demands. But it wasn't until I said no that the masks finally fell off. Turns out, to a lot of people, I was only lovable as long as I was sacrificing. One Saturday afternoon, I sat on the back porch with a mug of hot tea, watching the white daisies I planted in early spring slowly lose their petals. The air was crisp, and there was something raw but freeing in the breeze brushing across my cheek. I no longer felt the need to prove to the world that I wasn't a bad person. I no longer felt responsible for healing the wounds of those unwilling to be accountable for their own pain. I just needed to breathe in my own home, on my own terms, in the life I traded my youth to build. Brura. My mother still hadn't called. My father had sent only one brief text. Whenever you're ready, the family's still here. I didn't respond, not because I wanted to cut ties, but because I refused to reopen a relationship stuck in old patterns laced with one-sided expectations. I knew deep down that real connection only exists when both people are willing to grow, to take responsibility, and to respect each other. Without that, blood alone doesn't make us anything more than strangers. 1 month after the Facebook incident, I ran into Rachel, an old friend from yoga class. She used to be close with Lana in high school but had distanced herself from that circle long ago. After class ended, she sat beside me and smiled. I read your post. No one says it out loud, but I think a lot of people understood. They just don't have the courage to admit it. I was surprised. Rachel was never the meddling type, but her voice was unusually sincere that day. You know, she added, maybe people are so bothered because you were brave enough to set a boundary, and they aren't. I smiled, a real smile, one that didn't need to defend itself. I don't want anyone to take sides, I told her. I just want people to stop rewriting the truth. Rachel nodded. That kind of strength, not many have it. That night, I returned home and walked into my familiar space. The cozy living room, the soft scent of wax melts, the tidy bookshelf, and a stillness that wrapped around me like a thick quilt on a cold winter night. The house hadn't changed. I still lived alone, and I'd never been more grateful for it. I don't have everything. I've probably disappointed some people, but I didn't lose myself. I'm no longer the Mia from years ago, the one who always nodded, always gave in, always let others' feelings take priority over her own autonomy. Now I have a small house I built with my own hands and a boundary, clear and firm, between real love and manipulation disguised as family loyalty. Mia's story isn't just a family drama. It's a lesson in boundaries and self-respect. In a world where women are so often expected to sacrifice, Mia chose to protect the peace she paid for with her youth. She wasn't heartless. She simply stopped carrying the burdens others refused to own. Sometimes real love doesn't mean giving endlessly. It means having the courage to say no when saying yes would mean losing yourself.